I think the Free Cities Foundation is the most important liberty organization in the world. We've got a lot of organizations out there that will help you define what liberty means. They will tell you why it's a good idea. They'll make an argument for you. They'll get academic papers written as to, why this would work and why it's a good idea and all those sorts of things. Those things exist, and I think they're wonderful. Take a look into what we're doing and consider what would the world be like if these ideas got out. And because they're really not. And even within libertarianism, these ideas aren't out. And we need them spread.
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Right, Mr. Mark. It's been a while.
Indeed.
Well, it wasn't that long, was it?
I don't know. Maybe about a year, a little less than a year.
No, it's definitely not been a year. But it was. I was in America. It was in America, wasn't it? I came to your former studio,
the Free Talk Live studios,
and actually, you've got you're well received in the fair state of New Hampshire, according to the comments, and at least. You're a liked individual up in those parts.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Probably you've just been there for a very long time, haven't you? So
yeah, I mean, I don't give. So, one thing about free staters, if we want to use that term, porcupines, people who have signed up to be member isn't the right term. A signer of the Free State Project Statement of Intent is the terminology that we use. Those folks are probably the most patriotic people you're ever going to meet.
American patriotic?
No, New Hampshire patriotic.
Right.
So they specifically that state. The next, following that I've met are folks from Texas. So if that gives you some idea of what we're talking about. I mean, people really like the place that they live, and they want you to move there. They want you to believe that it is the best at everything, for everything. And 20 years of living in New Hampshire says to me that is not true, right? Like, New Hampshire is really, really, really good at several things. It's a great place to raise a family. It's the freest state in the union by a good stretch. And it's getting freer. It's moving in the right direction, lots of things. But when somebody says, well, I don't want to move because of the weather, well, I think that's a valid concern. I mean, your life is your life is short, and you've got to make it what you want it to be. And if you don't want to slip on the ice once a year, deal with the cold, heat costs more than air conditioning, just whatever it is, you don't want to. I mean, some people want to live in New York City. They want to live in big cities, and they can't appreciate what New Hampshire has to offer. I mean, Manchester just doesn't stack up to a major city vibe. And, if that's what you want, then that's what you want. And I think that's okay. In many cases, free staters are just like, no, New Hampshire's the right place for everybody who's a libertarian at all. And I just don't think that's true. Now, if you're a libertarian living in Maine or Vermont or Massachusetts, upstate New York, maybe Connecticut, Rhode Island, what are you waiting for? I really don't understand. I mean, especially if you're in Massachusetts, you can't be 40 miles from New Hampshire. So, you're not going to be that far from the relatives. Just drive in from a period of time, whatever it is, so I'm on the fence in many ways. And I feel like I add a voice of reason to this particular conversation.
Funnily enough, I did a speech in Serbia recently to a group of people that didn't really know much about the Free State sorry, the kind of free cities ecosystem, but including the Free State. So I wrote a brief speech which covered everything along the spectrum, from Liberland at one end, which is full sovereignty, to sort of like, I put the Free State at this end, which is kind of like, you're not necessarily looking for sovereignty, but you're still looking for a freer society. And I actually came to the conclusion that it's literally one of the best ways to actually do it. When you look at all the different ways people are trying to create freedom in the world, and even the Liberland end of the spectrum, which is a group of people going for full-blown sovereignty on a piece of land, right? Even they are now kind of implementing a version of the Free State as well, because it came out in a conversation I had with Vit and a few other people from their government, is that, you know, they have the place they call the Ark, which is on the other side of the river in Serbia, right? Which is they bought a bit of land there. It's an old kind of, it's a bit like an old campground type place with a clubhouse and stuff, and they've turned it into the place that no one kicks them out of, basically. And it's only a sort of short boat ride to the actual Liberland on the other side of the river, but they're in Serbia. And I was sitting in there thinking, this is Liberland.
Yeah.
This is Liberland.
Right.
Like, and because no one's coming in, you're all Liberlanders, you all believe in Liberland, you're flying the Liberland flag, and no one's coming in here and kicking you off because you just bought a bit of land in Serbia and said this is where we're going to hang out. And the conversation then evolved into, but we've got a Liberland in Panama now, and we've got a group of Liberlanders over here and over here and over here, and you think, this is the Free State way, which is implement yourself and sort of like, and this is going to sound evil, but it's not. Infiltrate.
Yep.
But it's not the dark version of infiltrate.
I mean, there's probably another term.
Integrate.
Integrate.
What about
inculcate yourself? Like there's a few things you can do. But I became a fireman in Westmoreland, New Hampshire, and served as a fireman for 10 years. I did that to serve my community and ingratiate myself to some extent, and to some extent protect myself from the slings and arrows of my fellows in the area, because the Free Staters coming in, you all wear this mantle of, we're from the outside and we're here to help. Nobody wants that, right? So if you infiltrate, if you inculcate yourself, if you become part of the community, then at the very least, you take away a bit of that argument. And by the way, at least half of the people in New Hampshire, maybe it's 60%, are from somewhere besides New Hampshire. So they really can't say much either. If you're talking about politics, then they're talking about politics too, right? And if you're from outside the state and they're out from outside the state, what can they actually say? Oh, but you came here as part of a project and I didn't, so you're worse. I mean, it's a flimsy argument.
It's an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because it's the immigration argument.
Yes,
bizarrely.
It is. It's precisely that.
I know, but because New Hampshire's quite a liberal place normally, isn't it?
I don't think that's true. I think that it is perceived that way.
Oh, okay. Well, some of the cities I went to were.
Yeah.
And
Keene definitely is.
Right. And also, is it Portsmouth?
Portsmouth definitely is.
Yeah, right. And so that's another beautiful irony that if you complain about interstaters,
people
coming in, stealing our jobs. No, but that is the it's very interesting actually. But
it turns the argument on its head in many ways, and we'll say it as Free Staters is immigration is the problem. It's those massholes moving up from Massachusetts that just vote the same way they did. I don't think that's a valid argument. But many Free Staters will say it is that people from Massachusetts are coming into the state and they're voting the same way they did. But Massachusetts has 40% of its voters are Republicans. And there isn't a single Republican congressional district in the entire state of Massachusetts, or New England for that matter. And when they come up and they continue to vote Republican, just like they did in Massachusetts, then they're actually making things better, to my mind. Now, Republicans aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the Free Staters have been able to work with them in order to achieve many of the things they want to achieve. And, Free Staters aren't homogenous, so the Free Stater representatives disagree on some issues some of the time. But by and large, New Hampshire is moving freer and freer every single year, and it's because people said they're going to move, they're going to get involved. Now, there was a debate. I moved to New Hampshire in 2006, so we're going on, 19 years as a Free Stater. Well, I guess I was a Free Stater before that. But anyway, I've been involved for quite some time. There used to be a debate about, well, what are you going to do when you get to New Hampshire? Are you going to be an outside the system activist? Are you going to do, this thing or that thing to forward liberty? And ultimately, there isn't much that you can do that is more effective than being a representative in the state legislature. Maybe running, of course, or a senator or something like that. We have a couple of people who've been elected as state senators. And this is just far and away the most effective thing that somebody can do is to participate within the legislature, and it really works.
It does, and yeah, that's been my big conclusion, I think, from speaking now for 3 years. I've had the two biggest revelations I've had about this whole movement is, one, seasteading is super important, more important than people realize, I think, as even as a meme, as an idea, because it's actually the most sovereign, free thing you can do on this planet, as far as I can work out.
You're certainly more free. I don't know if you're more sovereign. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Well, I put it this way. I think that if you believe in free private cities, then it's the most perfect embodiment of one. A floating private city would be that. Anyway, that's number one. Number two is that the best way to create a libertarian society is to go where all the libertarians are. It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. That, like, not even any sort of esoteric things. Just do what the Free State did. Because there's not many of us. So just get them all in one place, and then at least you have a mirror pointed towards you, and you can't complain anymore because these are all your people.
See, I disagree with your premise.
Okay.
Let me, if I will, tell you a little story. So you've talked to Massimo. Do I have his right name? His last name? Right? Mazzoni.
Yes,
yeah, that's I say it right too. Massimo Mazzoni set up Morazon.
Yes,
and he did it about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and.
It's a ZA, by the way. People should know that, but in case they don't.
Yep. It's an economic and educational development zone in Honduras. It was built for workers, people who don't work, who don't make much, and to live in near the factories in Honduras. And there's not, 2, 3 libertarians that have. I guess there's probably been a total of a half a dozen libertarians that have lived there in its entirety. It's got
card carrying, usually, like Alex and Joyce and
me.
People like, yeah, right, okay.
200 rooms at this point, or something to that effect. And those people have an effect or whatever, but the vast majority of people are just workers living their lives. And because Massimo set this up to be a libertarian place, it functions as a libertarian place. There's no opportunity that you don't get to vote on what you want. There's Massimo visits about once a quarter and has a little town hall and hears the complaints and the praise from the local citizenry, mostly complaints, which, by the way, is hilarious. When a $2 an hour worker is berating a billionaire, like, something, you don't get the opportunity to do that in a regular government, right? But Massimo cares because he wants to set this up in a way that people can understand. Now, obviously, he doesn't bend to every wish that comes his way, but he tries to make this something that people really want to live in. And it turns out that our ideas work, which we always thought they would, but we never get the opportunity because that juicy plum, that delicious fruit of the state, is just too much for for the authoritarians. They've got to have it. They have to just bite into your freedom and let the drool down their face. They cannot let you be free. They cannot let you not think about their vain ass. These people just can't let you be free. But in Morazan, you're free. And no libertarians, other than Massimo, made it that way. So I would say, in fact, that the Free State Project is a really great idea because it gives libertarians something to do while we, who are actually building a free societies, go about doing them. Because the libertarians, in many cases, they just want to argue with each other about this thing or that thing or whatever minutia, and that's good. And again, the libertarians that moved to New Hampshire are being effective. They are popping the rivets of the state, is what I like to say. One by one, pink. Every legislative year, pink, pink, pink. Right? They pop a few of those rivets, and every year it gets to be more and more of those rivets. And I think that I think that at this point it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to be successful in so much as they will create they make New Hampshire as free as a state can be. And that's a bold, strong statement. And I hope that it's accepted in that way. But it will not be Ancapistan, right? It will not be a truly free place. There will be a libertarian who moves there and says, gosh darn it, this stinks because I can't do this crazy thing, whatever that crazy thing might be. I don't know what that crazy thing is. There's a lot of crazy libertarians out there. And so, I think New Hampshire's good for that. It gives them something to do, but at the same time, what truly works is working with a government, creating a special economic zone, arguing for what you can get as far as freedoms within that special economic zone, and then go about fundraising and building that special economic zone, whatever a place, residence within it. Because if you can live in there, then you truly possess the freedom.
Talking of billionaires, I had an interesting... I didn't actually interact, but I'm trying to interact with a person who... Do you know that? Have you heard of Whitney Webb? She has an amazing podcast called The Unlimited Hangout. It's like she's one of those people that really joins the dots. Thinking person's proper conspiracy theorist. Real data, real. Yeah,
There are conspiracies.
Yeah, exactly right. She shared on their site an article by a gentleman who's a British journalist, called journalist, I don't know, whatever that means, called Ian Davis. It was called City States Without Limits. Now, this is obviously a meme which is now going to start arising, if it not already has. Let me give you a quick, I'm going to read out what a summary is. That there is a powerful group of Silicon Valley oligarchs who are pushing for the construction of privatized city-states aligned with a global network who want to move away from nation-states to create an international network of city-states. And it's a conspiracy. It's not Massimo's presumably. I know the funny thing is they talked about Prosper in this article, but they didn't talk about Morazan, which would have been an interesting one, because Massimo doesn't strike me as the kind of oligarch looking for a tax dodge in Morazan or whatever, But what do you think of that? Because they cite things like the fact that Palantir, what's his name? The guy who runs Palantir was involved in funding Prospera and this, that, and the other, and they talk about something called the Dark Enlightenment, which is. Do you know who Curtis Yarvin is? Have you heard of that guy?
Apparently, I'm just sitting on the wrong end of the internet.
Oh, no. Right. Okay, right. Anyway, the point is that there is a meme, and it was shared on an outlet which I respect, albeit conspiracies. And when I read through it, I thought, wow, this guy sees conspiracies everywhere, literally. But what do you think about that? Because there must be an element of truth in there. Someone is funding these. Roger Ver's former business partner, what's his name? Olivia. Yeah, Olivia. He's now talking about Destiny. Doing one in St. Kitts. He's a tech billionaire, I suppose you'd call him, isn't he? So
I think it's an accurate assessment.
right. So
By
what
the way,
do you think?
when you define somebody as a billionaire, I think that anything above like $400 million it qualifies as a billionaire. Like, who knows? You know, when you get to that
Rich.
level of money, what's it mean?
Exactly.
You know?
But what do you think about this notion that there is a kind of oligarchic echelon of society who is doing this on purpose, basically to isolate them? To isolate themselves, but to create a city-state which they run.
Yes. I think that's what they're doing.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what I would do. I mean, absolutely. If I had the money to do that, yes. Here's why.
Go on.
Because the city bureaucrats, right? These people who managed to get elected. I've been elected. I was the town moderator for Hudson, New Hampshire. You know why? Because when I went to town hall, I asked, hey, on the last day of the election. So, I mean, you know, I went with 45 minutes left, tick tock, as the election, the registration was wrapping up. And I said, are there any positions that haven't been signed up for? And they said, yes. There's town moderator and voter registration person, right? And I said, I think I'll just sign up for town moderator. And I did. Now, at that point, I'm the only person on the ballot. And to beat somebody who's not on the ballot is a darn difficult thing to do. Yeah. So basically, ta-da! You know, just because I walked in, now, the only qualification I had was the ability to look at the town website. And no other qualification. Now, I've tried to do a good job and all those sorts of things, but there's no guarantee that somebody's good, virtuous, intelligent, timely. Like there's nothing that guarantees that your elected officials are good people. And if you presume that half of the people in the world are bad and half of the people are good, I don't know what you presume, what anybody presumes, as far as how many people are good or bad. I tend to think that everybody just sort of follows incentives, and some people have a moral compass, but most people aren't really bad. There's some people that seem bad to me, you know, but it's a very small percentage of the population. But what keeps them from signing up to be anything? And this is the flaw in the system, is those people want to control you. They want to control what you do. They think that they do it best. The guy who, runs as city manager just went to college. Like that's the only thing that qualifies him to be the city manager. They know nothing. They are the dullards that control us, the power-hungry creeps. And yes, absolutely, I would like to work with some government in order to get a special economic zone, or even more, some sovereign territory where no longer can these people tell me what to do. And here's why. And here's your quote. Democracy sucks. It's really terrible. It's probably worse than monarchy, but only a bit. And somehow now, since we had all these democratic revolutions, these republics that replaced monarchies, we have this idea that is so deep in our psyche that somehow this is the only choice. You may have a dictatorship or you may have a democracy, and those are your choices. Pick. Obviously, there's the choice. But there's not. It's not that. We can truly have a system that works for everybody, that doesn't require vigilance and protection or anything like that. And here's what it is. It's simple proprietarianism. It's you go someplace and live someplace that somebody runs for the purpose of making the citizens happy. This is essentially what Massimo does at his in Morazan. And this is essentially what they do at Club Med and Princess Cruise Lines. They create a place, they run that place, and you want to go there to that place. Now, I understand that the specifics I'm talking about are, people waiting on you and things like that. But what if you could create a city without all the butlers, without the house cleaning and that sort of thing, that worked for you the way those places work for you? And if you can do that, that's great. I don't go to a hotel and wonder whether or not the hotel manager is a Republican or a Democrat. That would be insane. That would be a psychopath that says, I'm not going to go there. That's a Republican that runs that. If I like a hotel, I like a hotel, and it doesn't matter the politics of the guy who runs it. That guy's going to make sure that people are quiet in the hallways so that I can sleep, because that's what I want from him. I don't want to be... Think about how much time and energy goes into grasping that juicy fruit of power that is the state. Think about the amount of time that we all waste in the horse race of politics. And I like the horse race of politics. I don't know what sport I'd take up watching if it wasn't for politics, but that's what I'm doing because I have no effect on who's getting elected and who's not. So I truly say that the solution to liberty is proprietarianism. Just these little states that are owned by billionaires. Fine. They're the ones who can build them. They're the ones who have the money. If somebody said to you or I, hey, go ahead, here's a piece of land, you can build on it, but it has to be your money. It's going to be huts, right? We're not going to have electricity because we just can't generate all of that. Maybe we can buy some solar panels and work it out, but a billionaire can say, all right, let's bring in the construction crews and we're going to get things going. So if you don't like the billionaire's city, you leave. So long as you can leave, that's the only freedom there is. Tim, there's one freedom, the freedom to leave. And here's why. People will often within libertarianism, they throw around the term slave. And they're wrong. A slave is a person who must work and mayn't leave. That's the definition. They must work and they mayn't leave. And ladies and gentlemen, you might have to work to maintain your lifestyle, but if you are listening to this, the chances are very good you live in a Western country, and that Western country will truly pay you not to work. If you just decide tomorrow, I'm not working anymore, they'll start giving you money because that's what they do. Messed up as it is, it's truly a messed up system, and that's why it's going to fail, because somebody went out and said, oh, but I feel so bad for the people who can't work. Then everybody who doesn't want to work becomes a person who can't work. And that's the end of it. Now, I suspect one of these billionaire places, they're not going to have much sympathy for the notion of, well, I can't work. What are you going to do to support me? But maybe that's so. If so, it's probably going to deteriorate, and I'm not going to want anything to do with it. But I get to choose. I get to decide which one of these. So, yes, that's absolutely the conspiracy. The conspiracy is that wealthy people are sick and tired of stupid, poor morons telling them how to live, affecting productivity and regulating them out of existence. In the case of Roger Ver, chasing them around the globe over regulations that didn't exist when they, gave up their citizenship. It's absolutely, absolutely insane. And that's why they want it. Because government sucks so bad. These guys who got rich within those places want to leave it because they can see just how bad it is. They got rich in spite of it.
Thanks. You're supposed to say, no, it's not a conspiracy.
I make my living telling the truth and saying things that others won't.
I mean, basically what you're saying, which was one of my first thoughts. I didn't hammer it home as hard as you, but my first thought was, why is it so weird that people want to live outside the state? It's basically a statist argument, right from the core, right? And I've got a feeling, but that was what was surprising about it, because it comes from the sector of society that's distrustful of things.
Sure,
but it's almost like the default setting of the state is just exists without them even noticing it there. I think that's what it is, because, and I've reached out to this guy. I'm trying to talk to him because I want to tap his mind. I want to see why. It was a ginormous article, 2-part. Took me about like half an hour to read it. It was huge, and it's I don't know. I'm in two minds, because I think the way when they were describing Prospera. A lot of it was crappy talking points from about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
The crawfish bay stuff and all this kind of that wasn't really true, that they're going to take land. And it was all stuff from left-wing publications. And
funny thing, I heard one that Prospero had murdered people in Crawfish Rock and got away with it.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's how crazy this stuff is.
But it was all the left-wing talking points without really researching them. And then a bunch of research into who were part of the original funding of Prospero, Peter Thiel. And they class Peter Thiel as one of, I don't know whether Peter Thiel's... I don't know, a lot of conspiracy theories around Peter Thiel.
If you're rich, there's conspiracy theories that say you're a bad person.
Right. But so I was just surprised, because it's like, yeah, I'm on your side. I'm thinking to this guy, yeah, I'm on your side. I'm on the side of what you're talking about here. But I think if I approached my own life, and I was thinking at the time, I was on a work group chat, a Free Cities Foundation group chat, and someone asked a question about wanting to change something about the way we all work, right? And I imagined I was suspicious, and suddenly I looked at that and went, why is he trying to change that? Mm-hmm. And because I was trying to put myself in this bloke's shoes, that he's suspicious of what's going on here, because I'm not suspicious of the Free Cities movement at all. I know a lot of the people. I know some of the billionaires, and I kind of know a bit about what's going on. So, but I'm not really suspicious. But as soon as I turned into suspicious mode, I could even turn that to my colleagues and go, why are you asking to change that about the way we work? Is there some ulterior motive here? Do we need to do that? And it was just like, come on. And that's kind of how I got the impression, because everything was conspiracy about the way that city-states are arising. Whereas I can advocate for city-states from a completely opposite. I can go the complete opposite way, and like what we mostly do on this podcast is talk about the benefits of them. Mm-hmm. And I could talk about the benefits of them for billionaires as well, which there are as well. Even Massimo, last time I spoke to Massimo on camera, he said, yeah, it's a business. It's not all some kind of I'm not doing it purely out of the glove of my heart, although there's a lot of love that goes into that place from him.
Absolutely. And by the way, it is the least profitable thing he does.
Of course
it is a business.
Yeah.
And it is making money.
Yeah.
But it's, it lost money long enough that it has not broken even. Yeah. And it's certainly not the most, by any stretch, it's the least profitable thing that he participates in. So, to call...
You wouldn't decide to do it, basically, from a business perspective. No. Right. He's done it from an ideological perspective. I agree with that. But I don't know. I've got a feeling that because that idea, this meme about the kind of oligarchs, popped up in a quite respectable and well-known and well-followed place, I suspect it's going to rear its head a little bit more. I suspect forward.
It is too, but I really would turn it back on its and on the user here is well, why don't you want these people to live the way they want to live? What is it about what you want that would stop them from living the way they want? Because the fact that a billionaire exists doesn't bother any one of the listeners. Nobody out there, well, it bothers them, but it doesn't affect their lives in any way.
They might argue that it does, though. I think they might argue that billionaires are affecting them. For example, say the Microsoft guy. God, my memory.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, yes. Bill Gates is buying up farmland. We all know.
Okay.
Right?
Yep. Finite resource that they couldn't buy.
Right, exactly. But you could easily say, okay, if Bill Gates wasn't buying up... I know Bill Gates buying up farmland is a symptom of the system that we're in. It would be better if it wasn't happening, because I think it would be better if individuals owned farms.
If only other people would do what I wish they would do.
Okay, right.
This is what the petty tyrant says, or the great tyrant. All tyrants say, if only other people would do what I want them to do. Now, that person who says it, by the way, couldn't run a farm to save their damn lives. If you gave them a farm, it would take them 3 years to be able to make it profitable. But instead, they say, why don't all the little farmers who were farmers be farmers? Well, because the work isn't that great. And you, Mr. or Mrs. Consumer, don't want to pay extra. You don't go out and buy the CSA. You don't go out and buy the organic stuff. You want the cheapest price for your Cheerios and your milk and whatever it is you get. And this is the result you get. If you want small local farmers, go to a small local farmer and start buying his products, because that's the only solution to this. Getting online and ticking away about how billionaires are doing this and oligarchs are doing that. I mean, it frustrates me because this is so close to a mental illness. As to be vanishingly close.
We're not. I think we're more mentally ill.
Well, I say that the difference between libertarians and the rest of the people is the difference between wild animals and domesticated ones.
I take it we're wild.
We're the wild animals.
Okay.
You can call that good or call it bad.
No, I don't mind that. I'll take that.
But the wild animal lives by tooth and claw, right? He lives by the work that he puts in. The domesticated one's like, meow, fill my bowl, meow. I want my treat,
Must say, though, what you've just said makes me think that the free state idea is right. I mean, what you're saying there is, look, if you want to live in a particular society, don't complain about billionaires doing X, Y, Z. Create, go to your farmer's market, go to your this, go to your that. But I think there aren't enough people who care enough. So the way to solve that is to all amass together in one place.
Yep, concentration. Concentration.
So it does work.
Well, I don't say the Free State Project doesn't work. I just think it's the right thing to do with libertarians, while the libertarians with money, the billionaires, right, go and build the thing. So Bitcoin made a lot of wealthy libertarians, and they're going to be able to create 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of free places where we try freedom. Now, it's not free as in the end of freedom. It's free as in it's private. Right? So, for instance, in Morazan, there isn't a pot dispensary. There isn't a brothel. Now these places exist in more status places, but they don't exist in one of the freest places in the world. There isn't one in Prospera.
But are you saying because it's not allowed, or because it's their rules, or because it's just
It's not that it's not allowed. It is not allowed to be sort of prominent. If you went to Prospera and you said, hey, I'd like to open up a brothel, I suspect they would tell you, we appreciate where you're coming from, but no.
Okay, so convince me that's a libertarian perspective then.
Which is the freedom or the private?
No, the saying we don't want a brothel here.
Okay, so libertarianism means two things. And they're not always the same thing. Libertarianism means you can do what you want on your property, right? So we're going to call Prospera, it's the property of Prospera Inc., right? They got together investors and they came up with their rules, and those rules don't include brothels and pot shops, to my knowledge. And whereas, and that's their property, not yours. So you're not free on my property, you're free on your property. But you're not, because your property is owned by the state. That's a fundamental idea that you have to get a hold of, is that you don't own your property, ladies and gentlemen. It's not yours. It belongs to the government that claims it in that area, and you are a tenant on their property.
Allodial titles. Do you know about that?
Well, it's not even an allodial title. It's a...
no, but an allodial title would be actually owning it.
Yeah.
But you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also a fee simple title where you don't have to pay property tax on it necessarily, but they still make rules on what you can do and can't do with it.
Zoning and stuff.
Indeed. And so the other end of libertarianism is that an adult can do whatever they want so long as they don't harm someone else. And then the debate gets into what is an adult, right? And I don't know, and I'm not going to get into that debate with you. But well, actually, I'm happy to get.
I think
the debate
over 18. Let's
it's a fine number. I can live with it. Some people would argue that 16 is a better number. Fine, I don't care.
16's
I've got a 17-year-old. I agree with you, but I wasn't. But at 18, I wasn't very mature either. In fact,
something happens at 18 though, psychologically. I think it does in England anyway. In the Great Britain, at 18 is a big age. You have a party. You kind of something changes in you. You do feel like sort of legitimized, and you just get out of school as well, which is obviously amazing.
Couldn't you used to drink at 16 in pubs?
No.
Okay.
You could drink at 14 as long as you were with your family.
Okay.
But obviously, most 14-year-olds don't go out drinking with their family. I think that's true, or is that France? God knows. Don't quote me on it. But no, it's 18. It always was 18. But no one used to. Then there was no such thing as asking for ID. You went to the pubs that would serve you, and the pubs that served you decided that based on whether or not they thought they were going to get caught. And, but if the police ever came round, everyone was gone way before that. There was a good system. It was a good workaround, because people wanted to drink when I was a kid,
Indeed. I saw young ones.
Yeah, we lived exactly like that. I was Neil.
I don't remember what the guy with the spiky hair and the cricket bat was, but I really thought he was amusing. Vivian, yes. Yeah, no, I was the hippie Neil. I had long hair. So the difference is that when it comes to this sort of super free place, we have no clue whether this will work, but we do know that people should be able to choose how things go on their own property. And I think that that's why free cities can claim to be free cities, is because they make their own rules, whatever those rules might be. You can't get into Prospera without their permission. There's a gate and a guy with a gun standing at that gate. And you get in based on whether or not they want to let you in.
You are making it sound like it's worse than it is. It's not like there's a guy standing there pointing a gun at you saying, "Who are you?" I've been there. But there is a bloke in a one of those who's sitting in a little off, and he can make the barrier go up and down. But
and he carries a
you made it sound like
45 ACP.
I probably never used it. Probably never.
No, I would think not. I don't imagine there's any firing. I don't have a problem. I'm from New Hampshire. I have no problem with armed people. I believe armed people keep me free.
More guns per capita than any state. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know.
No, someone told me when I was in New Hampshire. Average 4 per person.
Wow,
no,
it's impressive.
I thought you were going to say that's not very much. No, I think I just totally made. I think I just totally made that up. But I'm pretty sure it's one of the most armed states in the US, and it has the least gun crime as well. It's supposedly the place that proves the rule. Isn't it?
I don't think that it proves the rule, but it is very interesting. Yeah. And Vermont and Maine also not nearly as free, but very little gun crime there too. It probably has more to do with a homogenous culture that hasn't wanted to leave, because those places aren't the places that most people want to move to. They are the places that people are moving from, and therefore it leaves the old guard, and the old guard takes care of itself.
Okay, so I've forgotten what we were talking about. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm glad you framed it like that, because when I read that article, I was on the back foot, and you've basically come out and said, "Yeah, great idea." Like, why wouldn't you? And it's true. I'm
plan's a conspiracy, right? So if you make a plan to do a thing, it's a conspiracy. If you work with someone else to do it.
No, but the thing that struck me listening to you is that why it makes total sense, and you should be unashamed about wanting to create a place according to the way you want to do it yourself.
Right.
It's not like you want to conquer the world. You just want to create a little area, or even smaller. It could be even just your own property, a few acres or something. Just a place where I can do whatever I want. It's none of your business what I'm doing here. And that makes a lot of sense. It's just that when billionaires do it, people start talking about digital ID in 15-minute cities, and there's going to be like Prospera. Prospera is a good example.
I don't know what a 15-minute city is. I've heard the term, but I haven't looked it up.
Okay, it's just it's a centrally planned place where they're basically the conspiracy is that a city will be kind of like geofenced. So that means you can't go very far. It's all about controlling people's movement,
Sure.
and through money, but also through geofencing, which is, just ways of stopping people from going far. And I think things like that that is true. There's a truth to that, and I think once we get CBDC currencies, programmable government money, that's going to be a massive step further in that direction. But for example, when you look at Prospera, people talk about Prospera. Yeah, it's a kind of libertarian place. But yeah, if I want to go to Prospera, I got an ID card to get in there. They got to know who I am.
Yep.
That's the reality of a place that has a kind of fence around it.
Right. It's libertarian. It's not lawless, and there's...
Yeah, but I think, and I'll include myself in this, I think I'm confused by that. It's confusing me.
Yeah.
Because libertarian seems free. Yeah. It should be like there's no rules in that. But actually, if you want to kind of create a private place, you're literally by definition creating rules. And one of the things that you probably need to do is kind of identify everyone. I think. I mean, I do. What do you think about that?
Well, let me tell you a story about the Keene Activist Center. Now, the Keene Activist Center, called the CAC,
do you know the CAC's a slang word for shit in the UK?
I wouldn't doubt it. I've also heard it used as a slang word in the US for a penis. So anyway, we just thought it was clever. The Keene Activist Center was this house where the activists would go and, drink. A lot of drinking went on, karaoke and hangouts. And of course, they made signs to protest. And, it was intended to be the hangout zone. And I mean, think of Antifa is always talked about. They've got a headquarters in town, right? Yes, yeah. Well, this is the opposite of that in the political sphere, but exactly the same thing in the reality situation. Yeah. And what happened is lots of people would come and they'd go and they'd hang out and this sort of thing. And then over time, it got to be fewer and fewer people, but those fewer people were there more. And we started sort of asking, well, it's not as fun as it was. What happened? And one of the things that happened, I couldn't tell you everything that happened, but one of the things that happened is that a couple of creepy guys kept bothering the girls. So when the girls don't come anymore, then nobody comes anymore. And so we're like, well, how do we solve this? I say we. I really didn't have anything to do with this because it just seemed gross to me. Like, who's going to vacuum the floor here? This place is a mess. But forget that. I did go over and have some wine and cheese one night. And what we decided to do was hold an inquisition. Really? Well, I mean, couldn't describe it any other way. I got to see this as an onlooker, as a reporter in the situation. So it's like, well, this guy's a creep. And
like right there, out in the open,
right,
with him in front of you.
And then the girls, tell us about your experience.
Oh, Jesus.
And then, so he's a creep, right? and I'm pretty sure that guy's a creep.
Yeah.
But what do you do when when it comes to what do you do with the creep? Well, they decided to vote him out. Well, then what happened? Then people got in their head, I can get rid of anybody I want so long as I can get enough members to vote with me. And it began to be this sort of inquisition. And then this was the end of the Keene Activist Center because they voted out the people and then it was done.
But that you've just described the arc of civilization right there.
Indeed. Yeah. Yes. And this is the thing that we have to get beyond. And that's why I say Massimo Mazzoni's Morazan works because you can't vote somebody off the island. But if somebody acts like a creep, Massimo's going to say, what, is he a creep? What is he doing? And he's going to go in, there's going to be a little investigation. Massimo's not going to do it. He's going to send people to do it. But there'll be a little investigation. If in fact the guy's a creep, his lease won't be renewed and off he goes. And it's done by one central authority. Having a decision maker in many cases is a better thing. And remember, I'm going to repeat it again. It's really important. There is only one freedom. The freedom to leave. If you can leave, you're free. And almost everybody leaves Morazan every day, right? And then they come back. They choose to come back. And that's what makes it a free place. Now, what is going on, say, in New Hampshire is much more a libertarian power grab, right? Trying to take and I think it's a good idea. The authoritarians created an authoritarian place with authoritarian rules with the intention of ruling over you. So the libertarians concentrate enough and they grab some of those reins of power and finally tell people, you know what? You're not going to tell me whether or not I can grow vegetables in my front yard. You're not going to tell me where I can park my car. You're not going to tell me these little rules that my roof has to be a particular color. I'm sick of this. And you're not going to tell me how much square footage I can build on a given lot or that sort of thing. And that is what I hope they're managed to do in New Hampshire. But again, they're only going to be as free as a state can be because they're under the federal government.
Well, also, what has actually happened, which is fascinating to observe, is that within the influx of libertarians, that the people that signed the pledge or whatever, they're now in small groups.
Yes.
Cultural groups.
Yep.
And some of them are kind of hard edge. Yep. No smoking, no drinking, no drugs. And then there are groups...
Wife swappers.
Yeah. And they don't mix by the sounds of it, which is really fascinating. So this is kind of like happening.
In many cases, they can appreciate the other's position so long as they vote their way. But every once in a while, they have an inquisition and one of them must be nailed to a cross. Yes. But I mean, any group, people... Once you get up to a certain size, those groups are going to begin to split. And I think libertarians, their size is smaller because they're individualists by their sort of nature and definition. And, they can handle groups of 8, 16, and it starts getting real shaky after that. And... my wife will often reference one time when some people came out to do some work on our house while we were building it. This had been 2007 and 2008 that this was being done. And 2008, this guy said, well, you can call me a libertarian, but I consider myself more of an anarcho-peacenik or something like that. He came up with some term. And she's just like, man, these people are boring. The slicing of the pie into these tiny thin slivers in order to, define yourself. To her, to me, it's just, I hear this all the time. People, like, I like the yellow and black flag because that more represents my feelings. I like the yellow and white flag. I'm a mutualist. I'm a, agorist. Fine, whatever.
The tyranny of small differences. It's a phenomenal concept. Funny enough, I was just thinking about it when I was younger. I remember coming to this conclusion when I was sort of in my sort of 20s. I lived in a lot of shared houses. Back then you could rent large country houses and stuff quite cheaply, and we used to live in a lot of them. And by the end of it, I remember, because I've still got friends that still live like that in communes, pretty much. Mm-hmm. I remember realizing that the way that really worked was not to have everyone involved in the running of the place, but to have someone who owned the property who gave you the rules. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was what actually worked really well. Not in a nasty way or anything. It just functioned well.
Yeah, it's tough because, on one hand, you don't always want to wash your dish immediately after using it. However, when you don't wash your dish immediately after using it, the next guy lets his sit for 3 days. And then they pile up. Everybody's got dishes. Whose dish is this? And that's just the dishes. Using the sink, and it gets dirty, and it's tough. And then I don't want to be the one who cleans the sink all the time because Fred comes in and he shaves his face in and he leaves beard stuff all over the place. And it's really difficult.
There's an interesting social experiment that was done along those lines where somebody left a very expensive bicycle out in the open in one part of town, the dodgy part of town. It got stolen instantly, or or was it a car or something? It immediately got stolen in the dodgy part of town. In the posh part of town, it didn't get stolen. A couple of days later, someone smashed a window, and then almost within the space of a couple of days, everything started getting stolen and nicked, and just it was that first thing that triggered it. And then everyone is looking at it. Even in the posh part of town, they're like, "Oh, well, if he did it, I can do it."
Right.
Whereas in the and I think that's what you're talking about there. One person leaves the dishes out, and then it just becomes, that's what we're doing now. Then is it? We're just leaving the dishes out.
Apparently,
and then the whole thing falls apart, and you have inquisitions, the Dishgate, and.
Yeah, basically there's only a few systems that work, and communes definitely aren't one that does. You can start a workers' co-op if you want.
People always say kibbutzes work. They are a form.
Sure, I've never been at one. I can't really say what worked about kibbutzes and what didn't. But
do you think they work?
They were definitely armed.
Oh.
Right? And that might be the reason. I don't know. I presume they did work, but I don't know much else.
You're right. It could be a myth.
I kind of leave kibbutzes and the whole Israel argument off the table most of the time, because it's this weird place where people are basically arguing about their favorite type of race and socialism. Like, what socialism do they want to apply to which people? And I don't want much to do with it, frankly. It's very difficult.
Kibbutzes are socialist, right? They're socially set up, yeah.
Okay. It's commune, pretty much, to some extent.
Yeah.
And if you can make a commune finally work, I support you. I really do. I mean, I don't have. This is the thing people say about capitalism. Capitalism will allow you to run any system you want to run, if you want to call it capitalism. I call it a free market. Free market says, run whatever system you want. I don't think your system's going to work. You will not find me as an investor for your commune. But if you want to open a organic farm, I'll be the first at your place to order my vegetables on a regular basis. This is a great system. These CSAs in the U.S. or wherever they are, whatever they're called, wherever you are, go to these local farms and support them, because they give you an abundance.
Co-ops, you mean?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that what you mean? Like a bunch of farms get together and all sell their stuff via one place?
Not for me. What I've generally done is found a farm, a big one, that's, they're working all the time farming, and then they give you on a weekly basis whatever the
box.
The box full of stuff.
Yeah.
And you've got to be a dedicated produce consumer to do that whole box. Otherwise, You're just gifting it to other people.
No, we give it to we've got chickens, fortunately, but my wife started getting a box recently.
Yes.
And the chickens are much happier than they were before.
Fennel, what am I going to do with this? The chickens will love it.
This week, chickpea, veal, and scallops. It's like, what? Just chuck them in the pan, But what is the way that it works then? Do you think the free private city model is the best one?
Yeah, I do. And I don't even, with the free private city, the way Titus Gable, however you want to pronounce it, the way he envisioned it was essentially a competition of anything that anybody wanted to do. So if you wanted to have a Muslim city state, then by all means run yourself a caliphate. If you want to, I don't know what exactly like caliphate is, so if I got my terms wrong, sorry. If you want to do one that's complete democracy where everybody votes on everything, we're going to have mac and cheese. Everybody's eating mac and cheese tonight. Put it to a vote. All in favor, right? And we just do this. And with apps, you could do this now. You can truly vote on everything with these little apps. So you could just have everybody lives in this democratic thing is a place.
Hellhole.
Right. If you like BDSM, you can have a place where the men have to walk around on leashes and the ladies carry bullwhips. Whatever it is you want, you could have it. He didn't mention that, but I thought of it.
That's your city, isn't it?
Right.
That's where you're going.
And
this is stuck in my mind now.
Yeah, right. I can't really go any further. So
does everyone have to dress like that?
Right. I haven't put a lot of thought into it, but I think we could probably sell this to some.
Mark, it sounds like you put a lot of thought into it, mate. I'm not being funny.
I think we should
night
work
at
on
about
it.
9 o'clock. Go on, yeah.
So, all these things compete, and then people want to live where they want to live. And I think that this is the best system because currently you can see it all over the place. You go to Twitter, these people can't live together. They hate each other. And they all want to be involved in other people's lives. You've seen the world's smallest political quiz, the Nolan chart, the one that says, freedom versus authoritarianism, left versus right. And you look at this and, why shouldn't people collect in a particular area? And I'll tell you, because the American dream is a nightmare. Home ownership is terrible. It's because it adds to the cost of moving from one location to a next. It's bad enough when it comes to leases. But when it comes to home ownership, it's probably $20,000 all told to sell your house and move to another place. That's why they say don't buy unless you're going to be in a place for 10 years. Who knows whether they're going to be in a place for 10 years? If you take my adult life, I lived for 10 years in one place. I'm 55 years old. You're counting from the time that I'm, 20 to the time that I'm 55. And in that 35 years, I lived in one place for 10 years. And I've probably lived in 10 places, maybe more, in that time frame. And, well, I guess if you're, I don't know. I don't want to go into how many it was, but I lived in a lot of places. And I owned a lot of houses. I probably shouldn't have bought many of them. Some of them I made money on because I caught the real estate boom in the right angle. And I must say, I've made money on real estate generally as opposed to not having made it. And if you're doing it for an investment, that's good. But remember, commercial real estate is probably the place to make money, which is to say renting it to someone else. That's probably the way to make money. I say live in a place you rent because currently if something breaks at my place, ring, ring, I call the maintenance guy. Oh, the hot water heater's not working. I don't have to get out my tool. I got rid of my tools. I sold them at a garage sale. I had a room full of tools and just sold them at pennies on the dollar. And I am so much freer because now when something breaks, you can't call Mark to fix it. I've got to call the maintenance guy. I don't have a tool. I got an adjustable wrench. I've got a hammer. I've got a power, drill, the electric screwdriver kind of thing. And that's about all I got. I can hang pictures on the wall for my mom, but doing all that housework, you're just the slave to that piece of property. And then you die. And then somebody else comes and they're the new slave to that piece of property.
I think if you like your property, though, yeah. I would say I'm necessarily a slave to my property, but I get immense enjoyment out of it. Not in strange ways, like I've got just recently. Really, we had an old disused barn, stone barn, and I was storing wood in it, and over the last few weeks I've really got it into shape and turned it into basically a wood processing factory for the fire. And now it's got a kettle and a little, ring hob in there and a table and a chair, and it's like, yeah, I like it down here.
This is your spot.
Yeah, it's the one place where it's a man cave basically,
yeah.
but not in the. Everyone does a man cave in a different way, don't
sure.
they? But you do need a place like that because in the house, although it's my property,
it's hers.
No, it's everyone's. Mm-hmm. You can't go in a room and get any peace and quiet. Someone can just walk in at any moment.
Sure.
But somehow when you create a space like that, it's not that anyone even wants to go there as well. Because it's a room full of beautifully stacked wood and all the tools you could ever need to sort of turn wood into heat. Mm-hmm. And that gives me immense enjoyment. But doesn't give everyone else immense enjoyment.
No, they just enjoy the heat.
Yeah. But that's part of what the enjoyment is. It's like you actually get to do something in there that keeps you fit, keeps you healthy. You can listen to podcasts while you're doing it. And it's a service to everyone else. It's a beautiful thing,
That's how families work. This is how communes would work if they worked.
Right, but I only do the wood there. It's like
right.
I'm not about to. I love gardening, but a certain type of gardening. I don't like doing vegetables. I like planting trees. I hate weeding. It just bores the crap out of me. And
sure.
Stuff. So I wouldn't be good on a commune, but in my own communistic society where I'm the dictator, and I'll do the wood. I'll choose that for myself, but
I had something very similar. That piece of property that I told you about, that I was on for 10 years, we had pigs, we had a garden, we had, I heated with wood, and, we cleared pasture for the pigs and did all kinds of things over the course of that 10 years. And it was a wonderful place to raise my son. Farm work is a great tool for the kids to,
100%,
to have them learn the value of where their food comes from and, what it takes to produce these things. I think it's important. However, my wife wasn't quite as house proud when it came to that thing. I'd said, I want to be buried here. I cared so much about that piece of land, but, she didn't like it as much. She's like, well, why don't we get a lake house? Now that Bitcoin's gone up and we got a little bit of money, why wouldn't we enjoy it? I'm like, all right, well, if you want. And I sold it to some friends, and with a clause that I could buy it back if they, and I decided that I didn't want to have it because it was a lot of work,
A clause that you could buy it back?
Yeah.
Do they even own it then?
What
was their? Did they get it cheaply for that?
If they decided that they would were to sell, it was a right of first refusal.
Right, okay.
So if somebody says, "I'll buy this property for $200,000," then they must bring that offer to me, and then I can say, "I'll take that $200,000." And I sold it to them, the concept to them as, "Look, this is protection for you." If somebody comes and offers you a lowball price and you don't know that it's a lowball price, then I'll buy it at that lowball price, and then you'll know.
Well, you might know.
I'll offer to buy it at that lowball price, and then you'll know you shouldn't accept this lowball price.
But like you said, though, you won't. I think I've gone through a similar process that I'm far less sentimental about property now, because for the first time in my life, I've realised it's a liability. Yeah. And that's been a long journey. I'm in my 50s too, and I've only just realised that. I've always thought the opposite.
Yeah, well, that's what we're raised, and we Americans, which were propagated by you, the English. I think that this is the Shire, right? That's the whole concept that Tolkien was going with his books, just talking about these peaceful countrysides and things like that. And it's who doesn't want that idea? And that it's just inculcated everything, but. Think about all the retirees that are moving to Florida or Arizona or wherever they're going. They've given up on the idea too. They're like, this is work. I spent 20 years, 30 years in this house raising 1, 2, 3, 4 kids, and I'm done. The kid can have it, and if they want to buy it, or I'll sell it and do what I want with the money, or whatever it is that they want to do, it's theirs. And I think they should do that. But I
always, that my sentimental brain would always fantasize about another generation appearing in that house and stuff. And that's changed. And I wouldn't say I'm happy about that thought. Like one of the things that 5 years ago I was so adamant about was that generational living was a really good idea. And actually, I should try and start it now, because it's not going to happen with my mother and father. We broke that tie. But with my kids, I could offer them, and that's why we bought what we bought, is because it has the option for. It's a farm, so the option for the kids to live in the same place is definitely there. But now, since all this kind of political stuff's been happening since COVID, I'm like, do you know what? I just want to be free, and I'll rent my dream house for 6 months. I don't care. I won't even care what's on the walls. I don't put anything up. I have no sentimental connection. But part of me thinks that's probably quite a sad thing to have happened.
Well, unfortunately, we're just not going to get that free place. The way that what happens with democracies, what happens with republics is that they grow by their nature, and no one can stop them. I haven't seen them be able to stop them yet. And therefore, you need, again, the only freedom is the ability to leave. So, and another thing that I believed the same way you did when my son was young, wouldn't it be great? I can turn over Free Talk Live, this successful podcast, to this young man. He can do this. Do you want to do this? He's like, yeah, I want to do that. And, it seemed like a great idea, but he doesn't have the passion today for libertarianism that I did when I started at 30. And obviously he has much more passion for video games and those kind of. He started a YouTube channel, and it was very successful. And he wanted to do something different, and he doesn't necessarily want to live where I wanted to live. And it's the same. So my mom offered her china in a big giant break front china cabinet thing to my wife. My wife said, "No, thank you."
It's a common story. There's been a number of things like that.
And that's what's going to happen with the house in all likelihood. Why would my son Jack want to live in rural New Hampshire?
Yeah, but I lament the loss of that. I really do. I think that, and I hope that there's a future where things like that happen more. Don't happen that way. Because I think what's disappearing with that idea that we're both espousing now is the sense of community that is forged over like 40 or 50 years.
Yep.
Because for example, just when I was coming here from home, I was driving to the airport, and to drive out of our farm, you go up a hill, down a lane, and then past the local church, which is an old sort of God knows, that 1600 church or whatever. But there was cars everywhere. And there was a field next to the church that was full of cars parked. And the reason is because someone local's just died. And when I look at that, I think, where I live, we're newcomers. We've only been there a couple of years, really, in that particular area. But there's people that have lived there their whole lives. And you can't, that's important. Those kind of things are important. Those 50-year friendships and relationships, and the people in the community who everyone knows, and who hundreds of people go to their funeral. If I died, not 100, I wouldn't get hardly anyone from where we live. It would be quite a small funeral, probably.
Yeah. If there was a Zoom meeting on the funeral, you might get a bunch of people to come. But
exactly.
Nobody's going to come back to her Hertfordshire, or wherever it is you live.
but I think that's sad for me in a sense that, but not that I even feel like I could live like that. I'm not sure I could stay in that place. Otherwise, why am I here in Prague talking to all these people with crazy ideas? It's not me. And my kids are kind of the same. They're probably going to live much more of a mobile existence, providing, mobility is easy.
Well, and when this idea was conceptualized, there were how many careers? Everybody was a farmer. And then in the off season, one of them would make candles, another one would be a blacksmith and, make the hooks that you hang on the wall, and, got to have the axe heads and all these sorts of things. Another one was a farrier. Another one was this, that, or the other, right? And they began to specialize because people needed farriers all year round. And so the guy's like, well, maybe I won't run a farm. I'll just do ferrying work. And it began to get more and more specialized. And now, there's not just a computer programmer, but there's specific types of computer programming, so specific that you don't know that the guy that does the, crypto safety analysis doesn't have any clue what the guy who builds word processing software does. And it's just so specialized that I don't think we can live like that anymore. It's a loss, there's no doubt, but I just don't think it's a modern way to live. I just don't think it is.
So what are we creating in free cities then? We're trying to create communities, right?
Sure. Well,
communities need certainly. Well, in the traditional sense, communities need that longevity. I think. I don't think transient communities. All right, it's a way of living, yep. But I don't think they last. I don't, by their nature. I think the whole. If you created a free city, for example, you would expect. Well, it depends what kind of place. I think actually, like Massimo's got it right. Free cities are for local people. People that create free cities for the kind of mobile Westerner.
Yeah.
It's a great idea, but really there's not that many people that do that. Really what you want is just local people moving for a better standard of living. That's kind of what it is. But I hope that there's I don't know. I don't know how we go back from this. It's like if you've traveled and you've zipped around the world and you've done this and you've done that, it's very hard to go back and then just spend 40 years in the same place.
How could you do it? You've got a handful of friends. You see that handful of friends. You find a mate you want to be with.
My friends are all around. Like, I have more friends at this conference than I do where I live, by far. And that's reality.
Sure.
And there's not a lot of people most people don't really even know what I do.
Well, what I found when I lived like that was that I wouldn't call the people who lived around me necessarily friends. I would have called them neighbors. Yeah. And I could always call on them to do this thing or that, and they could do the same with me. And we were, what I did was make myself available to these people to get done what they wanted to get done. And in the same way, they would do the same for me. And they really were, salt of the earth in this particular area. But you're right, all those people were those other kinds. They're just like, oh, here's somebody who's going to be a long-termer. I'll help them to be a long-termer. Had they known if I was only going to stay there 10 years, had I known I was only going to stay there 10 years, they probably would have treated me differently. But they said, here's somebody who's carving an existence out of the woods, and I will help them to do that.
But that's a common idea amongst incomers, certainly amongst the people that the people that live in places like that. They're always suspicious of incumbents because they don't think they're going to stay very long, and inevitably they often don't either. Because the desire to be an incomer, it stays with you. You want to be an incomer somewhere else after that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you lived in the same place for 40 years, and it's great. When I go to local village events where we are, I feel amazing. I just think this is incredible. This is absolutely amazing. Yeah. But I volunteered at the school, for example, to do things for the school. But I can't be a governor at the school because I'm not around enough. You need to be there all the time. So I just do the odd thing. So I can't embed myself in the same way at all. It's a weird paradox, actually, because I really do idolize that kind of way of life. But actually, I'm not really embodying it myself. I'm trying, and I do, but I'm not at the moment, am I? I'm like here and next, and then we're going to go to the Central America, and then we're going to go here, and you're like even worse. You're all over the place,
Well, now I am, but at the time when I was living there like that, I'd go away to a convention, and obviously I couldn't make it if they made a fire call, right? I'm not going to be there to pull a cow out of a ditch or whatever it is we had to do. And, if they, for instance, I'd have to work, of course, lots of people didn't go make calls when I had to work. So, there's always somebody who's doing a little more, and those people do kind of make a community work in many ways. It's no doubt.
So are we saying then that the best model for a place is a privately run, centrally governed place?
Yes.
But limited by size, presumably, or not?
I don't know that it has to be limited by size.
Because what happens when you get one the size of the UK?
Right. I think that at this point, that is not possible. There's just not enough, nobody has enough wealth to be able to run a UK-sized free private city. But
the contract's important. The contract aspect of it important.
Yeah.
So you need to have a contract that tells you what you can and can't do before you come in, and then you sign it, and there's the rules.
Well, with Massimo, for instance, his system doesn't there's an important distinction to make. The free private city is just an idea. It's a very blank slate. You can do whatever you want. So Titus Gabel came up with this idea. He said that, you can do what you want. So they can have property ownership within the free private city. Massimo Mazzoni is more of an ascriber to Spencer McCalla, Spencer Heath, and this sort of Georgist idea where everybody rents, what he calls entrepreneurial communities. and everybody rents. And the rent's low where he is, and it's $150 a month. I mean, you can't really argue with that.
But more importantly as well, it's lower than it is in the neighbouring places.
Correct. It's not lower; it's a higher standard of living, and about the same rent. And people come in, and they just scoop them up. Whenever there's a new unit available, it is gone. And what he says is that it's easier, rather than trying to guess everything that any kook might do to mess things up within his community. He just says, we only do short-term leases, and when I want to get rid of them, I get rid of them. And if for whatever they do, maybe somebody, wears a T-shirt every day that says, I hate Hondurans, right? And, you should be, our Western ideas, we say you should be free to do that. But they probably aren't going to like that in that community. And then at some point, there's going to be a conversation that's had that say, hey, you got to stop wearing the T-shirt or you're going to go.
The argument is then, if you don't like the rules, either leave or become a billionaire and make your own one. Is that it?
Ultimately, I get it. Most people can't be billionaires. I can't.
Well, you don't have to be a billionaire. Maybe a 400 millionaire or whatever. But no, you could put together something. I mean, you can buy property with 100 acres or 50 acres.
Sure.
And for all intents and purposes, you can live like that.
Well, I can't negotiate with the government, though, to get a free city now.
Yes. But no one's going to come and knock on your door necessarily if you live in the middle of nowhere. And it's a good start. It's definitely
I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people who live in the middle of nowhere where the government comes knocking on the door and says this thing or that thing. Hey, you can't build with your log cabin. You've got to use this or that. And they just, more and more in America, you just can't do what you want to do.
Maybe that's why then that's why it is why people don't like the idea. The people that don't like the idea don't like the idea. Because they can't do it themselves. They have to be someone who follows the rules, and maybe they don't want to follow the rules.
Or maybe they just don't want to, they just don't want somebody else doing a thing that they don't want them to do. There's some bad ideas in building out there.
But
by the way, the real crux when it comes to tyranny is building. If you want to build on your property, you will find the tyranny of wherever it is you live. Because that's where it is. I'm sorry, your shed's it's a half meter too big.
Yeah, but the point is as well that the state is already, the state is a billionaire basically running. I mean, it's not. It's completely illiquid. It's completely out of business. But for all intents and purposes, it's a billionaire running a place with a social contract, which is terrible compared to a real contract. But I don't know. I have sympathy for the people that look at the private city. Like Destiny would be a good example, right? Which is Olivia's project.
Olivia Jensen's project, Destiny. Yeah.
In Nevis, St Kitts, right? I can look at that and I can empathize with people that look at that and go, oh my God, a billionaire is going to create this thing, and it's going to be, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for the small person, really, and blah. Quite viscerally, I can go, yeah, I kind of see where you're talking from. But then when I think about it, it's like, that's total nonsense. It's like...
I can't even understand it. I mean, really, I truly can't. To me, when a billionaire is not meddling in your own local government, right? Because that billionaire, Olivia Jensen, could come to where you live in Herefordshire and say, well, now we're going to...
It's Herefordshire, by the way. Herefordshire. It's the Shire. It's just like the Shire.
You literally don't live in a place called
Herefordshire.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know where you lived, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to come close to... I was just making up some silly English word.
No, I live in a place called Herefordshire. We have Hereford cattle. They're a very famous cattle.
They are.
Big horns.
They are.
Yeah, good meat.
Yeah. I truly was just trying to make up some just made-up English town.
But it does look like the Hobbit where we live. It's all small farms.
Except for round doors.
500-year-old. No, there's people even with round doors. Like, they've done it for fun. But it's all very old farms, spaced apart, and mountains and stuff. Yeah. So you can't even understand that.
No, I can't.
But say. All right. Use this as an example then. Say that Olivia did come to Herefordshire and buy up a massive bit of land, and I'm right next to it.
Well, Bill Gates isn't buying up governments. Bill Gates is just using his money to make sure the politicians he wants to get in, and he then incentivizes them with dollars. If we're to be believed, I don't know what Bill Gates is doing, but Olivier doesn't have to come buy a single plot of land. He can just say, I'd like to mess with this system, and money and that system truly do make a difference. Whereas if he wants to go build a place where he and a bunch of billionaire friends go hang out, well, they're already doing that. Monaco exists, and it doesn't bother my existence. I think it's just meddling, ultimately. And the people that say that the poor will be driven out don't understand how rich people are. Rich people need somebody to clean the house. And
but even that sounds really derogatory, doesn't it?
Why?
But, why?
You don't think it's noble to clean houses?
No, because of the way that you can frame it that way, or you can frame it, this person is just paying a pittance for someone to clean up their mess. It's the same thing.
They're paying the market rate.
Right.
Because I live in Sarasota, Florida currently. That's where Mom lives, and I spend a reasonable amount of time there. If you try to pay somebody minimum wage in Florida, which I think is $7.50 an hour, to clean your house, you will find zero, exactly zero, not a number near zero, a number that is exactly zero of people that will be willing to do that because they won't do it. You cannot exploit somebody who cleans houses because they will either choose to do the job for the amount of money or they will not. So maybe they say they'll come in and do it for $15 an hour, and then they get to take a look at my place and how I live, and they're like, no way, I need $25 an hour to do this, or whatever it is. I have no clue. I don't take care of this particular job. Mom does have somebody who comes in. I don't know what she gets paid. But nonetheless, and by the way, that lady tells me this needs to be cleaned up or that. Like, she literally has a little chore list for me to do when I come in, because she's cleaned for Mom for 20 years, and she has no problem telling me what to do. She remembers me when I was quite young, so no problem.
Yeah, I applaud your resoluteness. I suppose I probably care more than you about what people think about my actions then, because you're like I say, I'm definitely going to talk to Massimo about this same thing, because I've reached out to the guy that wrote the article and he's not responding. I said, come on and talk to me. I'm really I'm not going to set you up. I actually just want to know what's going on here, and then I'm actually going to talk to a billionaire who runs one of these places and say, what do you think about this? Because Massimo's pretty candid about the way he speaks.
Yes, he is. He's about as candid as it gets.
But really, your attitude is probably correct. But it's almost like it's correct on paper, but in real life, it's harder to actually exhibit.
There are people who do not like me, and they don't like me because I've had conversations like this within my community on how it is that they shouldn't be able to have control over their neighbor's property. For instance, there was a guy who was across the street from me, across the highway from me, and my neighbors wanted to put up a cell phone tower on their property. They had plenty of property. They wanted to put a cell phone tower up there, and they were going to make a lot of money on it. That guy didn't want to get up in the morning and see a cell phone tower in his view. And so a man that had been, drank beer at their place week after week after week on Thursdays, and drank their beer for as long as you could possibly remember, says, nope. And he goes to the town meeting, and they, he stands against it, and they never got their cell tower. And I'm like, and I'm going and I'm telling, these people that this is just awful, and whatever. And
that one I can understand, though, because I think there's a negative externality to a cell tower, not least in the sense that, see, where I am, that would be an impolite thing to do. If it was close to another house, it would be impolite, right?
You use cell phones where you live, right?
Right, we do, but there's a kind of polite place to cite that. Mm-hmm. But also there's the fact that I think a lot of people genuinely think that being too close to those towers is actually bad for their health.
Oh, I believe they think that too.
So that would definitely be an externality that would bother me. But more to the point, it would be, impolite. Like, if you want to put a cell tower on your land, just put it miles away from everyone. It is an imposition.
Here was the reason. And it's partially the opinion. So a better place to have put it was the property next door. That property was tens of thousands of acres. It was gigantic. And it had the top of the hill where you would want the cell tower. But the problem is that only the abutters to the property get an opinion.
What does that mean?
Somebody who has a piece of property that abuts directly against.
Okay.
In this case, it was we'll call it the Smiths' property, right? The Smiths had 3 abutters, and I was an abutter, and then these other 2 abutters. One didn't care, and the other guy across the street manages to get the other abutter to care. And
the other abutter.
And this is how it was done. You would have never been able to build it in the right place because that property, tens of thousands of acres, probably has 300 abutters, maybe even more. Mm-hmm. And each one of them would get an opinion as to what happens. Okay. So you couldn't put the cell tower at the top of the hill, way far away from people. You had to do it this way, and that's why this happened. See, this is the thing, is trying to give everybody an opinion on other people's property causes this extra problem.
But I do understand it, because it's not, I would say I'm not an absolutist in the sense that if I bought this apartment, this is mine right now. Okay, so I can do whatever I want here. There is a limit to what I can do. And I think, have you got somewhere to go, by the way?
Yeah, I have to go to the T-Police meeting. I just want to make sure that I'm not late or something. I don't know precisely. But I have another few minutes.
How long have you got? Because I'm just looking here.
Call it 15.
Okay, I've got someone coming, I think, at 4:30. The next interview. Yeah, I mean, I think there's no. It's a bit grey area. There's no black and white way, I think, of deciding what is unfair between 2 properties.
Well, I think that I think this. So everybody if you give the neighbors the ability to decide what goes on your property and what doesn't, then, and this is the stuff that doesn't affect them. Now, you're claiming the cell phone towers might negatively affect people's health. And that may be true.
I don't know.
They would have to prove that, like in the same way that if I'm pumping depleted uranium into the soil, I can test soil on my property and say, look, it's coming down the creek or whatever, the underground water is pushing it in, and I've got depleted uranium in my property, and this is bad. I don't like it, and I'm going to sue. And that would be a tort, and then you would owe me. And then plus we'd have to clean it up. And that would be the same thing with the cell tower is my brain's being fried, and I don't want to wear a tinfoil hat all the time.
It would probably more be to do with how much it affects the value of the property and just the general sense
it does
of being.
that too.
Because I think I know a number of occurrences of this happening with wind turbines. And so people decide to have a wind turbine on their land, a big one, and the neighbours don't want it because they say it affects the price of their property. Right, well, yeah, and that. But here's my anecdote, right? I would never buy a property near a wind farm. So obviously the market in some shape or form is going to reflect that. So it would mean the price was slightly, but
well,
more to the point, I want to say, they used to say, well, look, we have and as far as the sound goes, there's an amount of decibels that you're allowed to create in sound, and below that, we've deemed that okay. And it's true, the number of decibels is quite quiet. Yep. But, a dripping tap is quiet.
Oh, I hear you.
Right.
I
but when you hear that dip, when you hear that drip, that can drive you literally insane. And they don't account for things like that. So I think it's really grey area. It's like, what does affect people?
Sound strikes your ear. It is aggression. Okay? And so within a libertarian paradigm, sound is something that one would take for granted, take into account in trying to figure things out. Not because you should be able to determine what goes on in your neighbor's property, but you determine what goes on your property. And the sound travels across the border. So I get where you're coming from. I also would say, if you don't want a cell phone tower on my property, you need to give up your cell phone. Right? Because cell phones don't work without towers. And there are definitely towns in New Hampshire that barely have cell phone coverage because every NIMBY, busybody stops putting up cell towers everywhere. I don't like it. The aesthetics. Can you make it look like a tree or a church steeple?
Yeah, I don't mind that. It's a bit, but I don't think you even need to do that. I think there's a right and a wrong. It's like, if someone was creating a lot of noise from their property and you were annoyed by it, that doesn't mean you've got to stop going to discotheques. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I think that, when it comes to noise, I think that there's the people that move in, right, next to a racetrack, and they're like, on Friday night, it's really loud here.
That's ridiculous.
They're assholes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Now, there's the people that will move next to a farm and be like, the horse poop stinks. What did you think was going to happen? On the other hand, if I move in and I like to play music at 11, at the middle of the night, and my neighbors are like, this wasn't happening before this person moved in. I think there's something to the sort of continuity of a place, and that's probably doable. But the good part of local government, which is what we're talking about here, right? The local government can do good things, is about 5% of what they do, and the 95% is bad. They, they're involved in everything, and they're always wanting to, do this thing or that thing. And I feel like I'd rather deal with my neighbor. And I've had neighbors come and say, hey, do you mind if I put up a little satellite dish on my property? I'm like, thanks for coming and checking with me, but I think it's shocking that you would have to. Yes, put up a little 1.5 wide cell tower on the top, or a satellite dish on the top of your house. Please do. Enjoy cable TV.
I did that with my neighbour, actually. I wanted to build onto the side, property to the side of our property. And before I ever applied for any planning permission from the council, I went down to my neighbours, who's the only person that would affect, and said, look, I'm thinking of doing this. You got a problem with that, because I just didn't want to create a bad vibe between me and my neighbour. It's as simple as that. And I would have stopped myself, or I would have adapted it so that because I believe in neighbourliness and things like that.
I'm glad you have a reasonable neighbour.
Yeah, well, I mean, they didn't mind at all.
Yeah, well, my neighbour, who was a selectman, minded the idea that I might add a master bedroom on the top of my property, not increase the footprint of the property, but add a master bedroom on the second floor. And so much so that he used his power as a selectman to prevent me from building, even though I got permission from the state.
What was he going to cast a shadow on his property?
He was looking to sell, and he figured a construction site would probably diminish the value of his property.
At that particular time.
Right. So he just stopped me from building for 18 months, and I got so demoralized in the amount of money that because he didn't say this. He just said, hey, if you wait, this X amount of time, or whatever, then I'll let you do it. But, he didn't do that. That's not how authoritarian little tyrants work.
I live amongst the fair people of Herefordshire.
There's an asshole in Herefordshire too.
There are, but country folk tend to be quite chilled round our way.
This was a country guy.
It's the States. It's because you're all armed. Look, I'm cognizant that I think someone's coming in 10 minutes. My next one. So let's wrap it up.
Absolutely. I got to say, it's a real pleasure, Tim. I really love doing interviews with you because I think you're just a consummate broadcaster. A
consummate broadcaster.
Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
great.
All right, you can give me that moniker. I'm happy with that. Why don't we wrap up with this? It's not like you're doing a talk at this conference, but you are heavily involved in lots of aspects of it, and you run the auction and stuff. But I do see that on Sunday you're doing a kind of one of those little meeting type things, and the title of it was "Why Support the Free Cities Movement." I
think that's on Saturday.
Is it Saturday?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not. Is it on the main stage then?
It's on the main stage.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was one of those Sunday things where everyone gets together and has a bit more of a town hall type
No.
thing. Oh, okay. It's a proper speech. So why should we support the Free Cities Movement?
Right. So the first thing I'll start with is I've got to create value. I think the Free Cities Foundation is the most important liberty organization in the world. We've got a lot of organizations out there that will help you define what liberty means. They will tell you why it's a good idea. They'll make an argument for you. They'll get academic papers written as to, why this would work and why it's a good idea and all those sorts of things. Those things exist, and I think they're wonderful. That foundation, I believe, is largely built. If you want to find out why it's a good idea to be free in this area or that area, that article is already written. The question is how do we do it? And I've argued at this entire interview that free cities, specifically entrepreneurial communities like Massimo's creating, I believe are the single best, most functional, most facile way to create liberty that we've come up with. And I'm a convert to this. I was just a libertarian to start with, and I just saw something that worked. And in order to get more of that, you're going to have to support the Free Cities Foundation, because they're the ones that are collecting this information. There really isn't an organization that's doing what they're doing. And thus, if we want this little tiny movement within libertarianism to grow and get the notoriety that it deserves, we've got to support this organization. So I'm going to start a monthly contribution to the Free Cities Foundation. And I'm asking everybody who's listening to me to look into the Free Cities Foundation and consider what it is you can give without, harming yourself, right? Like I'm just saying, if you're just buying us a cup of coffee, $5, $10, whatever it is that you're wanting to do. In my case, it's going to be a bit more than that because I really believe, but, take a look into what we're doing and consider what would the world be like if these ideas got out? And because they're really not. And even within libertarianism, these ideas aren't out. And we need them spread.
Okay, that's nice. I like it. I need one of those for the podcast as well, though. That's the annoying thing. I'll do a little donation page at the end. But that, I don't think it's as small as you make out, actually. Maybe it's just me being saturated with conversations about this stuff all the time. But I know many more people who, for example, know what Prospera is now than they ever did before.
Yeah, 5 years ago, it was a much smaller idea.
Yeah. And I think that's connected with the kind of crypto sphere and the Bitcoin world and the sort of longevity world, because they're basically using places like Prospera to operate out of.
They can't do what they do medically.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's not as small as you think. And, I don't know I really don't know how small it is, obviously, but I have a sense that it's actually growing in popularity, because I think what's crumbling is the idea. I think that more and more people are starting to think that idea that the state exists is being challenged in very small ways for the very first time. I've noticed, because it happened to me. And now I'm full blown, I've just done absolute retrobate with it. I'm just like, it's all terrible, but it's all crap. But, I can see it being discussed and being thought about, and that's the final boss, I think, isn't it? That's the big boss that everyone needs to address in order for them to say, well, what's the alternative then? Well, maybe this, competing places that actually are fair and opt in and that allow you to choose. And then we also get to see a free market of places arising. And actually, look, we see which ones do well. Maybe that's a signal to us about what would be a good idea to do it, not this mass enforced rule-based system where you don't even sign a deal with them. They just say, no, you're my bitch. You do what I say because you happen to pop up in Herefordshire in a little hobbit house in 1976 or something,
Right. Well, even worse, if you pop up in Yerevan, Armenia, try leaving there. If you pop up in North Korea, good luck in being free there. And this is what what these Marxists out there want. They want you to stay in one place and be ruled by those people that, to be exploited by the state. It's terrible if you get exploited by the capitalist, but it is your role. It is your purpose of being to be exploited by the state.
It is. It is. Right, Mark. Many thanks. You've got a shareholder meeting to go to, I believe.
Indeed. Thank you so much.
Billionaire capitalist, you.
Not I.
When you're sitting around that table with all the other billionaires, you can ask them, are we planning something dastardly here? Is this a conspiracy?
Well, I'm sure you're allowed to attend.
Yeah, I've got to work. I'm going to the plebs meeting, I think. Yeah. Anyway.
This evening, right?
Yes. Lovely to see you again, mate. And good luck with your talk and everything. And I'll see you around.
Thank you so much.